This engine came into our shop completely locked up. It overheated on the freeway, wouldn't crank over, and in my professional terms, it's totally cooked. It's a 2019 Ford Flex with a 3.5 liter engine. And if you know anything about these motors, you probably already have a guess what went wrong. But here's the thing, we didn't tear it down when we replaced it. So today we're going to find out exactly what killed this engine. Now these engines have a very unique and quite honestly controversial design. The water pump is actually inside the engine and it's driven by the timing chain. When they fail, coolant can leak straight into the oil. At that point, the clock is ticking. Let's talk about why this repair gets so expensive, what's actually involved to fix it, and why you should seriously consider replacing timing chains and timing components while you're in there. And in some cases, why replacing the entire engine might actually be your best option. Let's tear this engine apart and find out what went wrong with it. All right, friends, before we dig into this job, I should mention there are some specialty tools that you're going to need if you're going to tear the timing chains apart on this car. We've got some timing chain alignment tools here, and we've also got a harmonic balancer puller or front crankshaft pulley puller that you're going to need to pull the front balancer off. So make sure you have these tools available if you're planning on doing this job. I'm not doing a full tutorial here on how to do this, but you're going to get enough out of this video where you can figure it out on your own, and I'm going to show you how these tools work. Normally one of the first steps of removing an engine from a car would be draining the fluids on there. So you would assume that the oil has been drained out of this oil pan. I just checked it for myself just to make sure if I turn this engine upside down it's not going to dump all over me. And of course my guys left all the oil in there, so this actually worked out pretty well because I wanted to show you what this milkshake looks like. So this is nice because I wanted to show you what happens when you get too much coolant in your oil. And you can take a look at this right here and watch the color and the consistency of this oil. And this color that we're getting out of here is pretty consistent with antifreeze or coolant in your oil. That's the milkshake that most people are talking about. First thing I want to do on here is we're going to pull this intake back off. This has already been removed to get the wiring harness out and things, so we'll just get this out of the way. And then we'll need to get in here and pull these valve covers off. This way we can access the top of the engine where the camshafts are. So I should mention when you're prying these valve covers off, we've got a couple of seals here as well as the tube seals. Everything kind of needs to lift off straight. You don't want to crack anything. These are made of plastic and they can be pretty fragile. Let's do the same in the rear. So I wanted to show you now that this oil has been draining a while, we've got the majority of it out. I want to show you the color and consistency of the oil. And you can see it looks more like oil and less like a milkshake now. And the reason for this is that oil is lighter than water. So we've got antifreeze and water in there mixed with oil. And in the bottom of the oil pan, everything that was mixed up was settled to the bottom. This engine's been sitting on the stand for a little while. And now that we've drained the bottom portion of that out, the top portion of this, where the oil was sitting on top of the water, is starting to come out. You can see there's a stark difference between the two. I want to show you what this engine looked like when it came in. Normally you would want to be able to turn your engine around all the way, but you can see how it's clicking and popping and nothing's turning up here. So you can see the camshafts should be turning as I turn the crankshaft. They're not, and now I'm getting to a point where this keeps binding up on me, okay? And this was the reason we put an engine in it. It was so far gone it wasn't worth fixing, especially with the mileage on it. Let's take that same 18mm socket and let's pull this crankshaft harmonic balancer pulley off. Quick service reminder, you guys know we love hearing from you in the comments. I like to go in there and answer as many of your comments as I can. I want to see what you guys are interested in. I like to get your thoughts. I'm learning from you people as well as you guys are learning from me. I love this interaction. I think it's great for us. It certainly helps our channel grow as well. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video with people you think that can use this information. We're putting this content out for you guys to help you make your life a little bit easier and help you navigate the auto repair world. So thanks for following along with us, and let's get back to the video. In order to pull this balancer off, we're going to be using this 3-jaw puller. These pullers come with some different length rods, so you'll need to figure out which one sits inside the crankshaft, bottoms out, and also bottoms out inside the bolt hole for the puller. So make sure you have the right length rod in there. And I usually like to put a little oil on the ends of these. They seem to get stuck in there when you're using them often. These are a little worn out from previous jobs, and then a little bit of oil on the threads as well is good for your pullers. So if you put a little dab of oil on there, grease works okay too. I just like to use some oil before I use it, make sure the threads roll smooth. And let's go ahead and see if we can get this attached. All right, so you can see there's a couple of flanges in here. There's a couple of high spots where the teeth of the puller are going to slip in behind here and grab that. Okay, so you can drop it in this way and twist it if we can get all three jaws in there. But first we'll need to install our push rod, and then we're going to slip this in here. And then what I like to do once I have those caught, I just kind of grab everything, squeeze it into those flanges, and see if we can roll this in. And then we should be able to run this in and pull this pulley off. Okay. So with this balancer off, I just wanted to show you how these fingers sit behind here. These are the flanges I was talking about. You want to get those three jaws set up so they grab right behind those, okay? So this is going to look something like this from behind. Next thing we need to do is remove the timing cover. I went ahead and loosened a bunch of these bolts already, so you don't have to watch. But I did want to mention here, there are 3 long bolts in the middle that have 15mm heads on them. There's 22 bolts around the perimeter that have 13mm heads. And there's a sneaky little one in here with an 8mm head. So you want to make sure you get all of these bolts out. If you're trying to pry the cover off and you got a bolt in there, you're going to end up cracking something. So you can see the small bolt that's hidden in here. This is on the right side cylinder head. And then we've got these 3 long bolts in the front of the cover. You can see they're different sizes. So 2 long ones and a short one. And then we've got all these bolts around the perimeter. So what I like to do with these bolts is you see I've loosened them all and I've kind of left them in the cover here. I got a few left I want to loosen up. What I generally like to do when I'm taking something apart like this that has a lot of bolts, even if it's only got 4 or 5 bolts, I like to leave them in there until I'm ready to take them all out if I can, and then I want to match them up as I take them out. So if you just kind of stack them next to each other, you can see if there's any difference in length on there. Sometimes it's only a few millimeters, sometimes it's a ½ an inch. You know, it could be anything, as you saw in those long bolts. But when the difference is very small, only a few millimeters, that's when you have potential for some damage. When you go to put this back together, if you're not aware of the different lengths on there, even though they're close, you're going to have some bolts that don't tighten all the way, or you might have some bolts that strip because they're not long enough. So as I take these out around the perimeter, I'm just kind of looking at them to make sure they're all the same length. We've got 6 bolts up here in the valley, the intake area. Now this is a good example where these bolts are quite a bit longer than the rest of them. So we had 22 around the perimeter. I should say there was 16 around the perimeter and then another 6 in here. So we're a total of 22, but these 6 in the middle are quite a bit longer. You can see the difference in length from one of the timing cover bolts here. Next, we're going to pull the cover off. And when you're prying these covers off, you want to make sure that you got all those bolts. If you're prying and something doesn't come off fairly easily, you need to stop and take a break. This is area of concern for a lot of guys. They're trying to pry things off and they missed a bolt somewhere. And I've seen a lot of people snapping timing covers and things like that because you're trying to pry when there's still hardware in place, okay? So everything should come apart fairly easily. There you go. And then shouldn't require a whole lot of work. And there's your timing cover. Now that we've got the timing chain exposed, I can see clearly here that this timing chain is not even sitting fully on the crankshaft sprocket. Okay, so that's why when we were turning the engine over, nothing's turning on the top end. So this whole camshaft timing is out of relation. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some bent valves and things in here, but there's part of our problem. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and pull these timing chains apart and see what that looks like. Now that we've got this cover off, this is a good opportunity to show you what was going on here. When we were trying to turn this engine over, you could hear that chain skipping. So you can see it popping. It's trying to turn the chain, but there's not enough tension on it to turn this engine over. Now, if we put some tension on it, we'd probably be able to grab this and get these cams to move. You see them? So we obviously lost tension on the chain. I also want to mention on here that this vehicle has 3 timing chains on it. So you've got one chain that connects the intake and exhaust camshaft on each side. So there's one chain here, and then we've got the big chain that's driving the crankshaft around to these intake camshaft sprockets. Okay, so one big chain there, one small one, small one. So the next thing I want to show you on here is why our timing chain is so loose. Okay, and this is kind of the culprit that we've been looking for. What caused the demise of this engine? And if you look right here, we can see the water pump is bolted in behind this timing chain. So it starts over here and it comes all the way across. And it's driven by this chain. I mean, look at this sprocket on here. Okay, this is not how it's supposed to be. So you can see this water pump failed. It caused the timing chain to lose tension because it failed so badly. It also leaked coolant inside the engine, which caused probably the bearings to start to wear. And then it caused this timing chain to be loose. And this is the main point of failure for this car, is this water pump. Now, sometimes you get lucky on these and you'll see a little bit of coolant stains or coolant seepage out the side of this engine block behind the timing cover. But most often than not, this is what we see. The car comes in with a water pump that's failed. The oil is milky because the coolant and the oil have mixed in there. And it's usually a little too far gone. You know, once you've run this car for several hours with coolant, or even several minutes, depending on what speed you're driving, how fast the engine's going, you've already caused damage to the engine bearings on the car. So this is just kind of the situation with these Ford design here, is that if you get coolant that leaks internally, which they usually do, you're looking at probably putting an engine in it. So I wanted to show you how these camshaft alignment tools fit on the camshafts. But because this timing chain has jumped and the relationship is completely off, I can't turn the engine over completely without it stopping on me. So there's some interference internally. So what I want to do is I want to take this timing chain off first. Then we'll get these cams at least one set in the correct position so that the tool will fit on there. And I also wanted to show you at the front here that I was close to getting it lined up. I had enough room. But at the front here, we've got the camshafts facing 180 degrees out, so they're not even in the correct direction. We need to rotate them around another half a turn and get them where the dots are up top. So let's get this chain off and let's take a look and see what this looks like. Let's strip a little bit off the front of this engine, see if we can get this timing chain out of the way. There's our timing chain guide for the tensioner side. You can see this chain's getting looser already. And we'll get to the point where we can just slip this off and out of the way. And that's going to help free us up a little bit so I can show you how these timing chain tools sit in there. All right, now that we got that off, that frees us up a little bit so we can show you how the timing chain tools sit in here. We can rotate this around enough, I think, where I can get these in the position they belong in, and I'll show you how the tool slips in place. Now you can see when I rotate this, get those pistons out of the way because they're hitting right now, we can actually get this back where we want it. And then I'll show you how this alignment tool fits on there. See if we can do the same over here. In order to put these tools in place, we're going to have to remove this oil supply line. I'll just And then this tool is designed with these flat spots here to slide over the flat spots on the camshaft here. So let's see if we can get this thing to drop into place so you can get an idea how this fits. I'm gonna go. I have to turn this just a tiny bit. Now keep in mind, when this engine's in time, all this stuff should fit on here properly. It's close. Close enough. There it goes. Okay, so you can see that this tool has to sit down flush on the cylinder head. That's what these lands are for on here. They're going to sit flush on the edges of the cylinder head, and these should slide over the flat spots on both the intake and exhaust cams on here. So that's how that's going to set up. Should be the same for the rear when everything is in time. When those timing marks are set up correctly on the front, the intake camshaft sprockets or phasers, that'll line up properly as long as the crankshaft is lined up as well. That's how these tools are designed to be used. Let's take a look here at the front of this engine again. Back at the front of this engine, I want to pull this timing chain guide off. Get this out of the way. Now we have a little more access to the water pump, which I want to get off. Let's go ahead and take another guide out of here. Normally to do this job, we'd be pulling off the timing chain on the other side to access the bolt here for this guide. This guide sits over the top of the water pump here, you see. So in order to take the water pump off, we've got to get this guide out of the way. In order to get this guide out of the way, you're supposed to take off the sprocket here on the phaser, this intake sprocket on the back cylinder head, the right side. So there is a little trick here if you're doing these and you're not replacing the timing chains, which you probably should be. As a matter of fact, let's talk about that for a second. These vehicles are known, the earlier models had a lot of troubles with the camshaft phasers and timing chain problems. Ford supposedly resolved the issue in the later models after 2016, I believe. This one's a 2019. But these things still have troubles with timing chain stretch. They still have trouble with phasers that go bad. These are the phasers, the camshaft VCT sprockets. So it's a good idea if you've got a vehicle that's got some miles on it. If you're doing the water pump, it probably does have some miles on it. This is a good opportunity to replace the timing chain. If they're going to be stretching over time, it doesn't make sense to come back in here and do this 11, 12-hour job again in 6 months or a year. This is a good opportunity to take care of those parts. So if we're doing this job in the shop, I might recommend that we replace these parts knowing that they're going to fail sooner than later with a vehicle that already has some high mileage on it. So of course on this engine it's a little too far gone. We've already got the timing chain that jumped, and we've got some internal damage going on with all the coolant mixed in the oil and stuff. So this is why we recommended an engine on this one. But if you were to catch your leak quite a bit sooner, maybe you see a little bit of coolant on the ground, a drop or two, and you catch it then before it starts to overheat and starts to dump the coolant into the oil, well, then you have an opportunity now to make a proper repair on it. We can put a water pump on it, maybe replace the timing chain, do your camshaft sprockets, get this all taken care of at one time, reseal the timing cover, and then you can go down the road again for another 100,000 miles, hopefully. If you're just replacing the water pump on here, let me show you that little trick I have for getting this water pump out without taking off the sprockets and the timing chain on this side, okay? So what you can do is you can just loosen this bolt up under here, underneath the sprocket, until the head backs out and hits the sprocket, and then you can usually swing this out of the way to get the water pump off. Let's give it a try. I'll come in here with a little wrench. I'll break this loose. You have to be careful under here, because if you get it to the point where you get your wrench stuck in there, you're going to have to tighten it back up again. And the only reason I know that is because I've done it. So if you can get this loose with your fingers, it's nice. You can back this out. Let's see. Work this bolt head all the way out. Now, of course, you might be replacing timing chains anyway, in which case you wouldn't be trying to sneak this out. But if you're just trying to get the water pump done, this will save you some time and some effort if you can get it to work. Hopefully you can get it loose enough where we can do this by hand. And I can tell you this is a little bit trickier in the car, which is if you're doing just a water pump, this is where you'd be doing it. You're not going to take the engine out to do a water pump, unless that's the way you want to do it. With that bolt backed out, you can see how loose this guide is now. So now what we can do is we're going to take these bolts out of the water pump. Okay. Same process will apply. Just kind of leave all these in here so you can check the length on them. They're all the same length. That's good. All right. Okay, oh, there you go. All right, there you have it. Your water pump's off. Hit the floor, and you can see how loose this water pump is. It's grinding away. It barely even wants to turn on here. It's getting stuck and jammed. All right, while I've got this apart, I wanted to talk about this Ford design a little bit more. Generally, a water pump has a little bit of a vent hole, or a weep hole is what they call it. And when the bushing starts to fail inside the water pump, which is the most common failure, a little bit of coolant will start to seep past that, and then it'll seep out through the weep hole. Now, what Ford has done here, they still have a little bit of weep hole. It seeps out this little slot here, and this little slot goes through the engine block, and it's vented to the side here behind the timing cover. And if you can find some stains back there, you might be in good shape. So I don't really see much on this one. And this is part of the problem with this design, is that we rarely see the water pump leaking externally. It always goes inside into the oil. And like I said, a few hours of running like that, it could start to destroy the internal parts of the engine. The engine bearings and things like that are not going to get the lubrication they need. So this is why this design is so bad, in my opinion. It shouldn't be like this. There should be a better method. And you would think after all the years that Ford's been using this design, it would be something they would update and eliminate this problem. So if the water leaks out from behind here, you can see it was leaking, and it had some signs of leakage here. That's what these crusty stains are all over here. But you got to remember, there's a compressor on here for the air conditioning. There's parts in the way. This is not so easy to see. And this is part of the problem with this design. I wanted to also show you this little passage here. If I spray a little cleaner in here, you can see where it comes out in the front. Okay, and that's where that weep hole is supposed to feed. So I just wanted to show you the other tool that's in this kit here, designed to hold these small timing chain tensioners down and out of the way. So what you do is you can press them down, and this tool is kind of stupid the way it's designed. It's got to go in this little hole in the back where these oil control solenoids sit. There's a hole behind that. It's got to go down through there. It's got to rest on this ledge, and then the point of it's supposed to stick on the top of the tensioner on the plastic part. So it's a little weird to use, a little complicated, not the easiest setup on there, but I wanted to show that to you anyway, and I wanted to take a couple of these sprockets off here so you can see what it looks like. I've installed my camshaft holding tool on the back of the engine here, and then let's go ahead and just pop this off. Maybe you can get a... Cut! See if we can get this one. All right, we'll run these bolts out. Get a look at these phasers. And you can see how much coolant is coming out of everywhere. All this milky oil and coolant's pushed its way through everything. I wouldn't be surprised if these camshaft phasers are damaged. This is why I say, sometimes it's best just to replace all these parts anyway while you're in here. All right, so we're gonna pop this off. And this one, we'll get these out of the way. And then if you can see in here, how this tool is designed to sit on the back of this guide for the tensioner, okay? So it's just sitting on there, just barely wedged in here, and then wedged on top of that, okay? So I've gone a little further here, pulled the camshafts out, actually pulled the cylinder head up just to inspect some of the other parts in here, and I can already see there's some bearing wear in here from the lack of lubrication. So we've got some grooves starting to form in the cylinder head. And this is actually the best part of it. If you look at the camshaft caps, the bearing caps that go on top of the camshafts, you can see the excessive wear on those, as well as the wear on the camshaft bearing surfaces. Now, the real problem with this is these bearings aren't replaceable. So you're looking at putting new camshafts, new cylinder heads, and new camshaft bearing caps across the whole way. Plus the front bearing cap is actually one piece. That's the part that the oil lines connect to, and that the hydraulic tensioner sits in. So a lot of components would need to be replaced in here if you're going to try to fix this engine. This one's already got substantial wear going on it, and this is why we opted to put a new engine in there instead of trying to fix this thing. So I should say a used engine, what we ended up doing for the customer to save them some money. But this one here is pretty much toast, like we talked about. Well, guys, I had a pretty good idea going into this, what was wrong with this vehicle, or at least what led to its demise. And I want to ask you a serious question. Maybe not a professional, but you understand that water pumps fail from time to time. Do you guys think this is a great idea? Do you think this is a reasonable amount of work to have to replace a water pump on your vehicle, because I really don't. We know this is a common failure. We hate to see it happen, and every time we have to fix one of these things, you know, it's a minimum of $2,500. It's an expensive repair. It goes up from there if you need timing chain parts and camshaft phasers and all these things. For a vehicle that, you know, a water pump's going to go bad every 75 to 125,000 miles, it just doesn't make sense that you have to go through all this. And like I told you earlier in the video, this job is a lot easier outside of the car. When we're inside the car trying to do all this, it's not quite so easy. So I know a lot of guys have done a lot of these, and they get them down to a reasonable amount of time, not a full 12 hours worth of work. Either way, you're paying 12 hours for it when you go to the auto shop. So hopefully you learned a little bit here. You understand what's going on inside your Ford if you're driving one of these. And if you're not, you're probably in better shape than this. And I should probably mention too, I don't like to bash on Ford because they're not the only manufacturer out there that has a design like this. We do lots of Nissans that are timing chain driven as well. They never seem to turn into a catastrophe like this. Usually seem to catch them before that, and they're a lot easier to change. We don't have to pull all the timing covers and things. They've got a little access window on them. So just keep in mind that your vehicle may or may not have a timing chain driven water pump as well, depending on what you're driving. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, get a little information out of it, understand what's going on underneath the timing cover on these Fords, why they're so problematic, water pumps, timing chains, tensioners, cam phasers, oil control solenoids. All these things are problematic on these engines. I think that's why Ford's getting a bad rap on all this EcoBoost stuff. But either way, we're left dealing with it, working on it in the aftermarket, and this is kind of where we're at. So thanks for following along. We'll see you in the next video.